Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing people from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green and sustainable future for us, the planet and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem, passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. I'm really excited to share this amazing conversation today, but just before I do that, this is a friendly reminder for the visually inclined. All our conversations do go up on YouTube, which you can find at The Plant Paradigm, but I've also leave a link in the show notes. And if you are watching on YouTube, hi, how you going? Don't forget to click that beautiful like button and subscribe and comment and all the things you do on the YouTubes. Enough with the intro. Let's get talking about what we're going to touch on with today's episode. It's with an amazing couple I'd describe as digital activists. Jackie and Gareth run Vegan for the Animals, which is an organization dedicated to creating social awareness towards helping animals and the planet by promoting a vegan message. Across all social media platforms, they have over 400,000 followers, and stories from their website have tens of thousands of shares. I was really excited to dive into their story, and in our conversation we covered a whole range of topics, including the concept of online activism, effectively talking about veganism to different groups, including dairy farmers and hunters, social pressure, and of course our favorite foods. More than anything, Jackie and Gareth are beautiful souls and are doing amazing things in this space. And I think you'll really enjoy this conversation, and getting to know them has been an absolute blessing. Without further ado, I will see you guys on the other side. Jackie and Gareth, welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Hey, we're good. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Welcome. So you guys are house sitting at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, we're currently looking after a house in Wellington, New Zealand's capital at the moment, and just here for a week looking after a lovely little brown lab who is currently gazing out the window, and I'm sure she'll make an appearance very soon.
Yeah, she may well come and say hi.
Oh, that's so cute. Love a good lab. I love house sitting as well. It's such a beautiful way to get around, but also meet furry friends.
Definitely. She's right here. Hopefully she's not going to look our gear over. And if you hear heavy breathing, it's not us.
It took you for a walk. That's the heavy breathing.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been doing house sitting stuff?
The last year and a half, I guess.
Yeah, probably. We've been full-time nomads for coming up 4 years.
Wow.
And as our work sort of grew, then it became necessary to have a bit more of a better base to work from sometimes. It's van life is great, but it's hard to get privacy, and you're wide open to everybody really, which isn't ideal when you're trying to do this kind of thing.
So you guys have a van as well that you live in?
Yeah, we just got it's a Mazda Bongo, so most people might know it's like a little tradesman's van. We call it our camper van, but most people wouldn't consider that small.
You just think, it looks like a builder's van or something. His name's Ken. He's very much loved.
Ken the van.
Yep.
And then how long have you had the van?
The van, 3 years?
Yeah, we started with an even smaller one. So it was great when we first became vegan, because our whole kitchen is just 1.6 meters wide, and we were cooking up all this wonderful food when we started our new way of living, and we just thought, wow, well, here we are. If we can cook and eat well as vegans in a kitchen this small, then anybody can do it.
Yeah,
so.
I literally we had a dehumidifier in there just to make the space a little bit smaller, and I had to balance the chopping board on top of the dehumidifier in this tiny little space, and I'd just be busy chopping away, and every now and then the air would just turn blue because I've moved my knee and I've knocked the chopping board off, and there goes all my mushrooms.
Right. Did you have to learn how to cook specific meals, or be quite efficient in the kitchen, given that you had such limited space?
I don't know. It's more about just how you use the space. I actually banned Jackie from cooking for a while because yeah, I'd see the pots and pans getting raised up, but I was worried one of them was going to get launched back at me at some stage. But
I'm really clumsy. You know, I shouldn't be living in a van.
But you can make a lot of stuff with a small amount of space. It's all about, once again, prepping things, and you just got to take more time in doing it in a small space. But
yeah, I think our main problem was batch cooking, wasn't it? We couldn't cook large amounts because we just couldn't keep it.
And you wouldn't even have like all the Tupperware. You have to have like a big pot or pan, and sometimes you just can't fit that kind of. But I guess living in a van, you must have more time to do cooking,
Yeah, well, back then we did.
We did at the start, yeah.
Yeah, because we write for a travel magazine, so we go off and do something. I do the photos, Jackie does the writing, and we could come back and that would be the article done for the month, and we live off so little that that was sort of paying all the bills. So most of the other time, we'd just be doing odds and sods. And
we did have a lot of time to experiment, didn't we? We started a Facebook page called Camper Van Kitchen, because when we first went vegan, we were in Southland, right down the bottom rural heart of New Zealand, and we didn't know any other vegans, and about the most sophisticated ingredient we could get was tofu. And we were so excited about all the food we were eating, because we always thought that vegans lived on like fresh air and goji berries and things like that.
Fresh air and goji berries, yes.
We got a real surprise, and so we were so excited about all this amazing variety of food that we were cooking up, and we're like, well, we wanted a place that we could share that, but we didn't want to bore our friends silly with like, hey, we're vegan now, look at our food. We created this special page, Camper Van Kitchen. And so I guess, we did have a lot of time, didn't we? We threw ourselves into cooking.
Especially that first sort of summer being vegan. There was living in the van where you live more outdoors during the summer. So we just set up the table and be cooking in the campground and stuff. And there's some early videos on our Camper Van Kitchen page of me cooking out and about, and that's when I was a lot bigger. I'd only just gone vegan, and I was very overweight and stuff. But
you look like a wild man, this tangled, massive hair. Because we didn't have a mirror, we didn't know what we looked like or anything.
Didn't have smartphones back then.
Yeah, but who uses the selfie mode back then anyway?
Yeah,
true. It was just coming out. Yeah.
The funny thing was, when we were at the campground, is we'd be cooking, we'd be making something like, vegan sausages from scratch or whatever. And we ended up losing half our food a lot of the time, because all these people, we were surrounded by a lot of overseas people, a lot of travelers, and they would always come up and be like, oh, hey, what are you cooking? And so even though they weren't vegan, they would eat half our food. But
one Dutch lady in particular, we fed her quite well.
yeah, she had most of our dinner.
Oh no! And Gareth, then you lost a bit of weight then when you went vegan, hey?
Yeah, so I've lost, what was it, like
40 kilos, I think it was. I can't remember how many pounds that was. Around 80 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, I like at the start when we first went vegan, I lost a bit of that, but it was mainly when we started doing more whole food, plant-based that the bulk of it really dropped off. Because that's the thing, you can be vegan and still keep the weight on if you're still eating a lot of very processed things, a lot of oils, a lot of fats and stuff like that. But yeah, I was quite bad at the start. I cut out all the nasty corpse products, but I was still eating my white bread and lots of sugar in my coffee and stuff. So once I cut that out, it just melted away.
Yeah. And then, for someone who's kind of looking to shave off a bit of weight, did you have any kind of routines or meals that you really loved that felt like that helped you on that journey?
Well, we downloaded it's Dr. Gregor's the Daily Dozen app.
Dozen app.
Yeah,
that's great for getting make sure you're getting all the right stuff in the day. But the biggest thing for us was learning to cook without oil, and because
how do you do that?
Well, a lot of it's, you can dry fry quite a lot of things. Otherwise, you do a splash of water in the pan or a splash of stock. And I suppose some people may see it more as a sort of a steaming, but when you're just using a fraction of the water there, you can fry things quite well. Admittedly, there's some things like for us now when we do burgers or things like that, we more often bake them where we can because, of course, we put them on... we got some of those silicon baking sheets, and if anyone out there hasn't got their hands on some yet, they're well worth getting. But yeah,
is that the ones that get rid of the foil use?
Like your baking parchment and stuff like that, or baking paper.
Yeah, just reuse it over and over again.
You just wash it off, and stuff shouldn't stick to it. Although occasionally potatoes seem to stick to them, but they're fantastic. And it meant that we weren't cooking with all that oil, so we didn't have all that extra the fat and stuff like that with it, and it's just, I think cooking oil free was a huge factor in losing the weight. It wasn't necessarily specific dishes or stuff like that, because most of the time, for me anyway, in the kitchen, I look what we have, I just throw some random thing together. I have no idea what I'm doing, but somehow we still did recipe books and stuff. Like, luckily you've got the brain for it, and I got the madness.
More methodical, yeah. I think the great thing about us I lost a bit of weight as well, not as much as Gareth. I didn't have quite so much to lose, but I've got a chronic pain condition, and we found cutting out oil the dog is licking me. I don't know if you can hear that. But, I've got a long-term chronic pain condition that I was on 22 painkillers a day. When we cut out oil, I basically had to, could cut out the painkillers. I'm down to about 5 a day now. Sometimes I don't have any at all. So
is this different types of painkillers?
Yeah. So I was on some quite gnarly ones. So I had sort of nerve pain ones. That was my problem. So I was on things like amitriptyline, gabapentin, Panadol, like it was going out of fashion. So I counted up 22. And I was also on high blood pressure medication. And after 8 weeks of eating whole food plant-based, I was able to come off that. So
that's awesome. That must have been, I can't relate to the people but you hear these success stories all the time. People are like, I've gotten off my high blood pressure, my cholesterol tablets, all of that. And like, what does that feel like to have this condition? And societally, we're like, you're going to have this for the rest of your life, because that's the culture, right? People don't associate cholesterol and meat. So you get these tablets and you're like, this is just my forever thing now. What was that feeling when you kind of got off that?
I think the best thing is the feeling that you've got some control over your body. I felt up until then that I really didn't have any control over anything. I thought it was just my bad luck, genes, all of that kind of thing that people normally attribute these kind of quirky things to. And I thought it was something that I couldn't do anything about. So to have results so quickly, and just to have not, gone back, my blood pressure is still fine, and it's great just not to have to worry about that kind of thing.
That's so awesome. And then I want to change gears to Vegan FTA, which is, I guess, your little baby and what you guys spend a lot of your time on. Can you give us like a history of what Vegan FTA is and what you guys do there?
Where do we start? I guess we're I guess you could say we're the faces of Vegan FTA that we've come to be. We're not the founders.
Yeah,
we're more like the godparents,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the founder of Vegan FTA is a lovely lady called Sarah, and she's American. And like us, her and her husband travel quite a lot. And I think, like many people, you're sort of sitting on your computer and you see all this horrible stuff happening, and you think, I want to do something to help. And a lot of people don't get further than that. And so she was like, well, I really want to do something to help the animals. And so her husband, Mikey, he's pretty good with websites and things like that. So she started the Facebook page, Vegan FTA, and a website as well. And basically, it was just sharing content, wasn't it?
Just trying to get things out there, out into the public view. And that's the thing. So many of us were not able to get out there and physically go do a lot of these protests, but we can still have a very big impact by getting those out there to somebody else, and just being that facilitator, I guess, for more views on things. So
I think it started in 2019, I think, and I came on board. I started following them, and Vegan FTA for me just came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, I was like, wow, there's this Facebook page. I really like what they're doing. And in a very short time, they had something like 140,000 followers. And Sarah put a word out asking for writers. I've been a freelance writer for about 20 years and was looking to do more in activism that way, because like I said, I had a chronic pain condition, and so we weren't able to be out there doing a lot of the frontline stuff and doing the protests and the cubes. My body often didn't want to play ball there, so I started off writing, and then towards the end of last year, Gareth came on board. Sarah was looking for someone to do photography and film, and I said, well, I just happen to know a travel photographer and filmmaker, and so it just came along at the right time. And so it was something. Once Gareth was on board, we were just able to put our heart and soul into it. And I think, as Sarah would say, we've just become like a wee family unit, haven't we? Really, which is lovely.
It's a nice little dynamic duo. So are you guys writing all the posts then for that, like posting the photos up on Facebook and doing Instagram and all that kind of stuff?
So Sarah's basically in charge of doing all that sort of the uploads on Facebook, Insta, Pinterest. We're even starting to do TikTok, basically all the social media platforms. For Jackie, you write articles and some of the bigger content. Then I do a lot of the video content. We share a lot of other people's video content, but we also do exclusive series. I did one. Well, the first one was the sanctuary series I did, and since we were on the road traveling around, we'd go around to New Zealand sanctuaries and go catch up with them, find out about a few of the animals, film them, and basically get their story out there. And so I think one of the ones that's done really well was Gherkin, the pig from Black Sheep Animal Sanctuary in Otaki. And it was lovely going there and getting to meet the animals, hear about their story.
Gareth just loved hanging out with pigs, really. He's just in his element. He loves pigs.
Pigs are amazing. That's like I told my partner when we got together, like you can have a cat, you can have a dog. We're definitely having a pig though. Like that is a non-negotiable. Pigs are the best.
Definitely. And we've learned so much about pigs actually from being at the sanctuary, that a lot of pigs get there because people don't know how to look after them. So not all pigs are neglected.
It's interesting. Like it's one of the animals we see most commonly in the sanctuaries from being killed with kindness. People keep on overfeeding them, and when the pigs start to get obese, the fat builds in the eyelids, so that then they become blind. And we recently shared a story on Vegan FTA about Morty the pig, and he's another one who he looks like a big memory foam mattress basically, and he got so obese he went blind, and he's getting better now. He's at the right sanctuary and being looked after properly, but it was
a case of being loved too much and just not knowing how to care for these animals. But I think going back to the FTA side of things, Sarah she is our founder, and as Gareth said, she does a lot of behind the scenes stuff. She's always busy. She's always coming up with new ideas, but she's very shy, and so she's quite happy for us to be the faces. And we don't care, it's been great. And our activist series that came about, that was another thing that came about through COVID. As Gareth said, we were traveling around doing the sanctuary series. We also did another one called Eat the Change, where we were traveling around New Zealand showing innovative food places, like in Christchurch is Greater Goods, who is the founder Flip. She's descended from a generation of butchers, isn't she?
No, they've sort of got like their own vegan sort of deli there, and they've been making, I think they won the award for the best vegan sausage in New Zealand, I think, this year. And they do some amazing stuff. And there's also Bacano, which was a young couple who started a ready meal, vegan ready meal company, and just some great stuff like that. But once COVID hit and we were on the road, we were like, oh my God, where do we go? Because campsites were closing.
We were the people nobody wanted,
towns were like,
in a van.
Stay away, travelers, we don't want you. And fortunately, the house where we're at now, the family also had a holiday home in Napier. And they said, well, you can go rent that if you like. And so we ended up there, and we're watching the Climate
Diet Summit that was on during lockdown. And, like a lot of people, we were kind of thinking, now's the time to learn something new, to upskill and all of that kind of stuff. So we were listening to a lot of podcasts, and
we got into doing all these webinar things. And then through that, we sort of discovered that, hey, well, like right now we can be talking to someone overseas, no problem. And we decided to do the activist series, which we basically go and talk to activists from, big or small, all different means and manners of activism. Like we've got creative activists, frontline activists, business activists,
hospitality activists.
Anyone doing anything good for the vegan movement, and talking to them about how they create change, how they got into it, some tips about it. And it's meant to be an educational platform so people can learn how to become better advocates and really get the vegan message out there more. And that's, as we've been talking with Sarah about it, it's helped to cement what Vegan FTA is going after. And it's to really help people become more active in the movement, because plenty of us are sharing the information, we're getting the messages out there, but we need people to be as active as possible. And for us, we're all about positivity and also getting out there in your own different ways. So in this series, we're trying to show people that there's so many different ways to be helpful in this movement and make a difference.
Get people thinking, by looking at these episodes, not everything is going to be for everybody. Not everybody is cut out to do cubes of truth or to go and bear witness at a slaughterhouse and that kind of thing. And that's okay. But there are so many other ways, as I know ourselves, having the chronic health conditions and that kind of thing. We've learned how to think outside the square, and there are just so many people out there doing amazing things in so many different ways. We thought by putting this out there and putting it in front of a lot of people, I think we're up to like 365,000 followers now or something on Facebook alone. So we're like, we can show people, let's use this time to help people think about what they can do, especially during a time where, there were no cubes allowed and there were no protests allowed, and a lot of activism that people relied on for their activism and also for their social contact with other vegans, that all ended. So, it was a good time to come about.
Yeah. Well, look, you mentioned the climate, the webinar and interviewing a lot of activists. Is there anything you've learned over the past couple of months that have really changed your outlook on something?
Oh,
so much.
The time for learning. Yeah.
We filmed 24 episodes so far, and they're all going to be part of season 1. And we've talked to people like Dr. Clapper, Dr. Michael Clapper. He was wonderful he's another one who you don't expect to be for the animals, but you can just see the compassion, and he speaks so compassionately about the animals. But he had some really good ways of explaining things, coming from a health direction. I love using his analogy now about when you go into the doctors and how they can never figure out what's wrong with you, because it's the blind man and the elephant, they're all feeling a different part, the trunk, the leg, and no one knows what's going on because they can't see the full picture. Right. But I think one was Bobby Studd. He's from LA Animal Save, and he was sort of an activist we hadn't really heard of, but he was in episode 2 and he spoke about vigils and what it means to bear witness. And that was really profound, and that's really changed my sort of outlook on vigils and stuff like that.
What was his perspective?
So he was just sort of given the real reason why they go to these vigils, and it's just all about giving those animals that 2 minutes of kindness, because they've had their entire life where they've just been abused, being forced into this system where there is no kindness, so there's no hope. But for those activists going there to the trucks and giving them the water, giving them the kindness, it just starts giving me chills when I start thinking about that moment, and
it's a great one to watch. Made me a bit teary.
2 minutes to us humans is nothing, because our lifespan is, we can go 100 years, hopefully, with a good vegan diet. But, for the pigs, they make a few years at most, before their lives are cut early. And that's the thing. A lot of these animals who do get slaughtered are usually, still really infants. So that 2 minutes it's a big thing for them. And it really started lighting a fire under my ass, wanting to go and be there for the animals when we can.
Yeah, he's just got to be there. I think one of the things that I learned from Dr. Clapper that really helped is leading by example. He said, just lead by example. You can't expect everybody to see things the same way as you do at the same time. And if you just lead by example, it can be really frustrating if you're just constantly trying to preach to everyone, convert to everyone, getting angry at people. And he says, just lead by example, just do what you're doing, and, people will be inspired by you. And I think, that's helped a lot.
We've had that happen with my mother, because when we first went vegan, we rescued a lamb, and my mum would always pop up on Facebook and would put up a picture of the lamb, and she'd be like, mint sauce, and having a little digs and stuff like that. But just over time, we didn't try preaching to her. We didn't try, really doing anything. We just sort of showed the food that we're cooking and just showed how, I was getting healthy. We're both getting healthy. We're both happier. And over time, then all of a sudden she started asking us, like, oh, I've just watched this documentary, and what about this or what about that? And now she's full blown vegan, and I think she knows more about the doctors and stuff than we do. And she's absolutely wonderful and like just so stuck into it now. And it's brilliant. And that was just from us being ourselves and letting her see us be ourselves. We weren't trying to push anything, but for someone who was going mint sauce at the start, it's great to have that flip around. And another really good one though was Joey Carbstrong. When we spoke to him, that was a bit intimidating. We're sort of like, the Joey Carbstrong, oh dear, what we got ourselves into, because
especially me being a former dairy farmer as well, I was terrified. I'm like, he is gonna woman chew me up.
We thought he's absolutely lovely though. He's a sweetheart, really, and he was just really making that point of how you just got to get out there and do it. And even he says, there's no one way to do activism, and he just
just doing it and having that, getting over that fear, just like we've had to do. And I've spoken out, since being vegan about my years dairy farming, and I've written for a few things. I've done videos for a few things, and the first time was absolutely terrifying. I did something for SAFE. I made them block out my face, distort my voice, the whole thing, and now I'm like, I just don't care. We've got to share the truth. We're put on this planet for a reason, and we've just got to talk about it, and we've got to make people aware. And Joey spoke a lot about that. A lot of people want to do more, but they have the fear that they're not going to be good enough. They're not going to be eloquent enough. They're not going to get their message across well enough. And he said, he just started off rambling into his phone. He had something on his mind. He'd be there in his car, and he just got his phone out and started filming. And that was how he started. And he's just an amazing advocate, and we all have the potential to be an amazing advocate in our own way. So.
Yeah, he's a really good example of I think one thing that's cropped up throughout talking to a lot of the frontline activists is the Socratic method, and it's something like we hope to do a special on in the future, because that way of discussing with people and getting them to come to their own conclusions is just brilliant.
Yeah, rather than being confronting and accusing, it's getting people to think more about their choices. So
asking more questions and giving more answers. And I listened to some snippets of the Joey Carbstrong chat you guys had, and I just thought when I was listening to it, I'm like, man, I do want to have a conversation with him, because it's real. I'm not going to say that I disagree with some of his thoughts, but I'd love to dive into a lot of them, like specifically when he was saying, and I get it to a certain extent, when he was like, it's okay to talk to people about whole foods, plant-based, but like he's talking about making people have that moral and just connection to the animals. And I'm like, I get it, but I would also prefer that a majority of people would eat plant-based than a small majority would be vegan. And I want to, Joey, if you're listening, which I know you are, let's get together, because I want to chat about that. But speaking about you being a dairy farm, because I did read a few interviews. Gareth, were you in that industry as well?
No, I came onto the scene a lot later.
Right, yeah. So you were a dairy farmer. What was that switch like for you then to make that full 180?
Oh, it's, even when I first went vegan, I was vegetarian, ironically enough.
Right.
The whole time
while
pretty
being
much.
A dairy
farm. Because I was, and like a lot of the population, I was fairly lactose intolerant. I never drank milk. Right. I couldn't eat a lot of dairy products in the first place. But right from the age of 13, I've been vegetarian on and off. And from my dairy farming years, I stayed vegetarian pretty much, because I did develop this connection with the cows. Like, God, I don't want to eat something that I knew that's been on my property, or that I've had contact with in any way. And so I made that connection. But it wasn't until after I went vegan, amazingly enough, that I really made the connection between how harmful the dairy industry is. I think if anything, it's probably worse. You know, the amount of death and exploitation is worse. And I learned that from another New Zealand activist who was another dairy farmer over here, Jessica Strathdy, and I saw some of the talks that she had given. And once I made that connection, what I've been part of all of these years, it was just jaw-dropping. It was mind-blowing, and I found it very, very hard to live with, to think that I'd been part of it. And just making that connection, there was a lot of things that I didn't like when I was on the farm. I didn't like, that the calves had to be taken from the cows. I didn't like the bobby calves, was just awful. There were a lot of things that I never liked that I just thought was wrong. And I was always told, well, this is how it is. Yes, it's sad, but this is how it is. This is how it always been. And you get very ingrained in that mindset that, you're providing essential nutrition to the world and that, that this is just a sad part of what happens. And I tried many times to get out of it. I was always having different kind of harebrained ideas, new schemes of things that I could do instead of being in the farming industry. But I was quite deeply entrenched in it. I had a different partner at that stage who had grown up in the dairy industry. And I was just always told tough, really. But, now it was very, very hard to live with. And so from, when Jessica met me as another former dairy farm worker, she said, you've got to speak out. This is, because I said, how do you live with it? How do you live with being part of that? And just everything that we witnessed and our part in taking the cows and the calves and that kind of thing. And she said, well, we're all put on this earth with a purpose. And she said, we've got this knowledge, we've got to use it. So she said, that's how I live with the past. And that's been really good advice for me. That's really helped. I'm starting to feel a bit better. Initially, people had this quirky thing, as every time they saw me, they would be like, oh, let's go and take Jackie to see a cow, or let's put her in with a pen of calves. And I just couldn't handle it,
Right.
I would sit there among these beautiful babies, and even though, I'd never laid a finger on them, it was always like, oh, I've betrayed you, I've betrayed all of you, and you must know. But now I'm just like, no, I'm doing the best I can for them now, and I'm going to keep doing that.
Well, looking back, and I mean, when you're talking to someone and when you're having these conversations about animal rights or certain things, the one person that still this many years later would scare the crap out of me to have a chat with is a farmer, because I feel like they're quite a bit more stern, because you're not just questioning their thoughts, you're questioning their livelihood. Do you have any kind of thoughts or suggestions in which activists should be approaching farmers, or should you just let farmers just do them and make their own terms in ways of making a connection?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one. I still know a lot of people in the industry, and, I was friends with them then. I don't have a lot to do with them now, but it doesn't mean that, I think they're horrible people now because they're still in the industry. I would much, I don't agree with what they're doing, and I wish they were doing something else, but, it doesn't change that I knew them before that and know them as people. And, it's, for me, I know a lot of people get really, really angry when people just don't instantly go vegan. And for me, while I would love everyone to go vegan overnight, I have a greater understanding of that, I suppose, having been part of the industry, because I think if I was there milking those cows, rearing those calves, and I didn't make the connection myself, how can I expect somebody who has absolutely no knowledge of what goes on to understand, the horrendous exploitation? I didn't realize, because I always considered myself that I was nice to the cows, I'd be milking them and I'd be singing and, patting them all and calling them names. And, they all have a hierarchy. They have friends. They all come into milking in the same order every single day. They're very sociable, sweet, just beautiful creatures. And it never occurred to me while I was singing to them and milking them that I was robbing milk that was meant for their babies. And so, you get very entrenched. And I've heard, I actually heard something from Joey recently saying that how can farmers say that cows are part of their family? And to me, it sounded absolutely ludicrous now. And I don't think I was ever at the stage where I would say, well, my cows are my family. But I did, I showed them affection. I did, I was very, very fond of them because I couldn't see what I was doing to them. I couldn't see I thought being a dairy cow was pretty tough. I thought it was pretty boring life, even just the day-to-day milking without all the awful things like the artificial insemination and all of the awful stuff that you hear about. Even just the day-to-day drudgery of being a dairy cow, I thought was bad enough. But, they had names. They weren't just numbers to me. And there are other farmers that are like me that have names for their cows. I know farmers that, they cry when they put the cows on the truck to go to the slaughterhouse. But it's like, it sounds so ludicrous, I'm sure, to so many people listening, that they've got that compassion, they've got that flicker. But it's like, as I said, it's that feeling of, oh, well, yeah, it's sad, Doris was a great cow, but her time's come now and this is how it's got to be, which is very sad, because as you and I know, it doesn't have to be like that. But I think the thing that really gets my goat, which I know a lot of people aren't going to like, is for people to say that farmers don't care about their animals, because I did. Sure, there are some really bad farm workers out there who should not be having any contact with animals. They shouldn't be in the industry, and I witnessed a lot of things, and there are some very bad farm workers. But the majority of people that I work with, they did have some kind of affection and some kind of care for the cows. So if you want to rub a farmer up a wrong way, say that they don't care about their cows, because it's not true. It's really not. There is some emotion there. And a lot of farmers pride themselves on doing a good job, particularly, saying that people don't care about their calves. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in New Zealand, a lot of the time, the calf rearing falls to the women, because, we're supposed to have that maternal instinct and do a better job and all that. And so when I was in the industry, I took a lot of pride in doing as good a job as I could of raising the calves. And, I would get in there and play with them, and, they all were very friendly and affectionate towards me. I had several bobby calves. The first calf that I ever had was one that I saved from the bobby truck. Well, actually worse than that, she was going to be hit on the head, wasn't she? So, I had real affection for the animals, and not all farmers were like I was, but there are a lot that are kind of, they have a certain amount of affection, compassion, care, whatever you want to call it. It's very hard to put a name on that emotion, on that kind of feeling. But to say, if you say that a farmer doesn't care about their animals, you're not going to win them over. You're not going to get a decent conversation out of them. So I found the best way to approach farmers is really to just talk about the future. I've learned a lot about the sustainability of the dairy industry, or the lack of sustainability of the dairy industry, should I say. It's not something that continue long term by any stretch around the world. And so the best way to talk to farmers is be sort of like, well, have you thought about farming anything else? And give them a sort of feeling of empowerment, I suppose. Yes, we still really need you. We need you now more than ever. We've got COVID. We need to have this resilience in the human race, if we're going to get through this, and we need you more than ever to feed us, but we need you to feed us something else. So that's, I
think when you're, as an activist, talking to a farmer, it's understanding that there's such a heavy social conditioning, and they're so heavily ingrained in the system. Like for me, I've been watching that sort of unwind over the last few years going vegan, and it's like an onion with the layers, it slowly unwraps. And this is the thing, these people are right at the heart of it at the moment still. So you've got to understand that they are so entrenched in it that, if you go with those lines of, animals don't care about that, farmers don't care about their animals and stuff like that, you're gonna shut them off straight away. And so you kind of need to level the playing field a bit and, talk about what future things you can do. If you have a farmer in your area who is actually open to conversing, try and have a little research about what might grow in the local area, or if you've seen a sustainable farming practice, approach them with these things, because a lot of them are keen to learn stuff and they're interested in stuff that's going to make them money. But you just got to sort of, if you tread carefully, you can get them to talk. It's one of those closed book sort of situations. You've got to slowly peel the pages back. And once they're open, we've had some great discussions with farmers down in Southland. And it's just one thing I think we found as well was being able to take the mickey out of yourself a bit as well. The farmer down in Southland we used to have great conversations with, he'd turn up on his ride-on lawnmower and we'd say, oh, you brought us some Meals on Wheels, have you? Yeah. And, we start off our conversation with a bit of banter, giving us vegans a bit of flack, we're all grass munchers, but we then sort of talk about what else he can be doing, and it's just, you've got to understand that they're really, really entrenched in these mindsets, and a lot of them are so heavily in debt because of these farms.
Exactly.
All their money is in their livestock, and so all of a sudden, if you're saying you need to get rid of that all completely, they're just like, well, what am I going to do to live? Because
I'm already $4 million in debt.
I think, Jackie did a recent talk for the Women's Leadership Network as part of Veg Fest. And I definitely recommend people checking that out, because Jackie, you laid your heart and soul out into it and really explained some of these things a bit more in depth. But you've got to try and understand the farmer. If we go head to head, we're not going to get anywhere. But if you can level the playing field, then we can start making progress. You've got to get to 0 before you can go to 1. We're currently at -1.
Exactly. And I think learn more about, if we want farmers to get educated and make changes, we need to be educated as well. We need to know what else can be grown in our areas. If there are, events or, regenerative farming, anything like that you can learn a bit about, to learn more about what is achievable in your area, that you can actually have a decent conversation with a farmer about, rather than just saying, you need to change, you're doing it all wrong and you're a bad person, because that's not going to work.
No.
It would be great to go to somewhere and say, hey, did you know that, this is up by, 700% on recent years or something,
I definitely recommend vegans get to some of these farming events and conferences if they can, because try not to lose your shit there going to them. But if you can learn some of these new things, it gives the opportunity to steer someone in the right direction, and I'd love for everything to happen overnight. But, with a lot of these farmers, we have to steer them towards the path before they'll even consider it. It's
knowledge is power. I mean, I've been learning a lot recently about government subsidies, both here and in Australia, that are given to dairy farmers, and it is absolutely insane. And once you've got that knowledge that you can present to people, actually you're not holding the country up. The government is propping you up.
Give us some stats. Do you remember what kind of figures we're talking about?
In New Zealand, it's the government subsidises the dairy industry by $12 billion a year.
Oh my God.
$12 billion. $40 million goes into preventing farmers from polluting one lake, it's Lake Rotorua. Another $40 million goes into gets paid to dairy farmers for them not to pollute Lake Taupo.
Now, we're saying with polluting, it's like the waste to not go there?
Effluent, right. Yeah. So, New Zealand's got the highest rate of colorectal cancer in the world.
And the biggest hotspot is in Canterbury, which is the biggest dairying area. So
that gets $90 million a year from government to farmers in that area not to pollute the waterways. And, 90% of our native fish are extinct. So, there are all kinds of reasons that, I remember one thing we learned from Joey is that when talking to people, not everyone is going to respond to the same messenger. So, it would be great if everybody had the same connection and went vegan for the animals, but there are going to be people that go vegan for the health. They may, like in Gareth's case, once he heard the connection between dairy and dementia, which his grandfather had just been diagnosed in, that was what got him. Other people may hear about the horrendous state of the drinking water and be like, well, geez, that's terrible. So
when I brought up Joey earlier, that's what I meant to bring up, that the whole thing about the messenger, but I had a bit of a brain fart at the time. But some messengers resonate with different people in better ways, and
definitely
like my mom's struggling now trying to talk to some of her friends. They don't want to listen to her.
Right.
But she keeps trying to put different messengers in front of them, so hopefully one of them will tick and they'll learn something from it.
I went vegan from a Facebook post, so different things for different people.
Wow. Well, I always say one of the most frustrating things about activism and talking to people about their choices that they're making is the fact that you're planting these seeds that you might not ever see reap. You know, it could be a day when you're not around. It could be a seed that's then watered by another Facebook post, that's then watered by another Instagram post. But, you know, you're planting this seed and you don't even know if it's going to come into fruition. And you're just like, this person's not listening to me. But it's like the seed that you planted, you have to have this insane level of patience and almost foresight of like, no, it's okay. I've done what the job, you know, I've done the job. A successful activist moment, I don't think is turning someone vegan on the spot. Although that is super impressive, I think an activist's job is to just plant the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And it's that's the thing. You've got to, even if you've had a conversation that has gone negatively, you've still got to have that little bit of hope that, yeah, that maybe that seed still has got in there. And as you say, you might not ever see that flourish. But to me, it's kind of exciting to know that we're getting those seeds out there. You know, all of a sudden it might be popping off over there or over there. And you just got to keep on cracking at it, because that's the thing. You might not be the right messenger for that person. You know, you might not be the one watering that seed, but you know, you might be on the next one. And if we give up hope and give up trying, then who else is going to do it? So, yeah.
Well, what I find so fascinating about the dairy industry and I'm just going to say the stock industry in general and the absolute amount of subsidies, which I'd only learnt about, I'd say maybe in the past few months. You always kind of know it exists, but to the gargantuan amount that it actually is just mind-boggling. But also what's really fascinating, and it's kind of taught me to have a bit of compassion for the farmers, is the fact that, you know, when you or I, or maybe not Jackie's case, but when me and Gareth go vegan, it's like we get crap from our friends and like, you know, we get the slurs. But if a farmer goes vegan, they're going to get crap from their friends, their family, but to an extent where I've heard stories of farmers getting death threats for saying stuff like, you know, you're tarnishing the family business for this baloney freaking myth that's running through your mind right now. And I find that so, I think, almost hard to comprehend, because it just kind of makes you really sad, but also like compassionate in a way that you can talk to a farmer like, hey, look, this for you might be small steps, you know, maybe going cold turkey for you isn't a way, because you're going to have a situation in which you're going to have a little level of support. You know, if you think about the vegan community at large, humongous. Now let's think of the vegan farmer community or ex-farmer community, minuscule in comparison, you know? So I think having an inherent sense of compassion and almost empathy towards what they have to actually go through to make that switch, you know, it's almost, you couldn't even fathom the almost internal pain or emotional turmoil that, you know, has to happen.
Definitely. I mean, we have some friends, game changers, as I'm sure you can imagine, that affected a lot of people, and especially those who were interested in fitness. And we had some friends down in Southland who were already vegetarian, had been vegan, apparently, and gone back to being vegetarian. And then because they were real fitness fanatics, they were doing the whole CrossFit thing. And, you know, they watched Game Changers, and you know, they knew that there was something in it. They knew it was something that they thought was worth trying. But then when they went to the gym and sort of said to the rest of the, rest of their peers, you know, what do you think about this? Should we check this out? And they were like, well, yeah, we know it makes sense. We know there's something in it. It's really interesting. But, you know, my parents are farmers, or my grandparents are farmers, and that would be going against everything they've worked for. You know, they've disowned me. It's crazy, and like you say, it's really sad how deep reaching this conditioning is.
Yeah. I apologize if you can hear snoring.
Yes.
Holly, the lovely Labrador, has decided to fall asleep next to the computer. So
I thought that was like a lawnmower or something. That is a great snore.
But yeah, like as we said about the debt thing as well, you know, so many of these farmers are actually, you know, they're struggling, you know, and yeah, if you have that bit of compassion, you know, if we can meet them at a level, you know, and look towards the future and how, you know, we can all move forward, hopefully we can make more progress with them. And yeah, there are some dyed in the wool ones who just will not budge at all. But we've got to try and help those ones. And we spoke to Dr. Mike Joy. He's a freshwater ecologist, and he's someone who we get a lot of our facts and figures off for the dairy industry and stuff like that. But he was saying about, going to these farming conferences and talking to the young farmers, if we can infiltrate that and get them thinking about the more sustainable future things, then hopefully we can bypass this generational standstill, because that's what it is. They get very hostile. Going to another talk that we did with Claire Mann, the vegan psychologist, she was saying about the existential crisis that happens, because our existentialism is the world that we form for ourselves and the way we go through everything and the way we shape our world around us. And when us vegans come along, the farmers got their little world there, and we say that you've got to stop, they have that existential crisis. And that's often what provokes a lot of the anger and the hostility, because you're disturbing my world. I'm struggling. I'm making do. I'm making it through each day in my world, and now you're saying I've got to change it. And
I think, none of us, I should say, I was never a farm owner. A lot of the time when I've spoken out about things, and, you see the Facebook comments, oh, she is greedy, she is only ever in it for the money. I didn't, that wasn't, I wasn't the owner. I was always doing somebody else's dirty work, So, but to try and put myself in I knew a lot of farm owners, and I knew a lot of farm owners my age, and, to try and put myself in their shoes. And there was one in particular that was, I think he would have been in his 30s, maybe mid 30s at latest, and was already in $4 million of debt to the bank.
Wow.
And, so year after year, he's gone to the bank. I'm trying to grow my herd. I'm trying to buy more land. this is the future. I'm progressive dairy and all that kind of stuff. And then to suddenly go to the bank and sort of say, oh, no, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to grow something else. What are they going to say? Where do you start when you're that entrenched in debt? You're that deep. And you've already been sort of extolling the virtues of dairy to the bank, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I want to go and grow oats now or hemp or something else, and you're already in this much debt and you've got hundreds of cows. I can't imagine. I would love to have a discussion with a farmer one day, and actually say, well, what would you do? What would those steps be if you wanted to go and do something else? How would you go about it? What would the bank say? I'd really love to have those conversations, because I can't imagine even, having been part of the industry myself.
Yeah.
Well, also, the government doesn't support this kind of stuff. Like, if you look at I haven't actually looked at the Australian one, but I've, funnily enough, looked at the UK one. I don't know why. But the actual allocation of subsidies so much weighs towards stock farming. So even though oat farming or hemp farming could be more profitable, the profit actually has to come from sales, not subsidies. Because dairy farming, in most cases is not profitable. And the only reason these farmers can make do is because of the subsidies. Otherwise, they'd be in very deep water. And look, I'm not going to blame the governments, because that's probably in place to kind of, I'm going to say, nurture old farms and old families that are still trying to support the economy. Although that might not be super progressive to what needs to now happen. It's I think, as much as the farmer is in charge, the governments need to help, because if they're, 4 million, an average mortgage is what? $500,000 for a house. And you think these farmers have 8 times the amount of stress right there. And then you want to change their mind about that. That is just hard.
Yeah, exactly. I think if more people knew about the subsidies, I was just talking to my mum the other day. She kind of tolerates me talking about my vegan stuff, and quirky daughter, and I was saying, well, did you know, that the New Zealand government pays $90 billion. No, sorry, I've got it wrong, hasn't it? Not $90 million was for Canterbury. 12 billion.
Yeah.
12 billion. Yeah, sorry, 90 million was for Canterbury. I said, did you know, that the government is paying 12 billion a year to prop up the industry than the actual industry is earning. And she was really shocked, and she was really quite angry. And my mum's 78, and she just couldn't believe, why this information isn't common knowledge. And if that is the case, we need to be doing something about it, because 12 billion is a lot of money, and that could be doing so much good elsewhere,
Yeah, we need to get that information out there, then also be approaching the government about these things and trying to get the legislation to move towards more plant farming. But as you've said, it's also about us backing vegan products and backing the vegan market that's out there. We spoke to Matthew Glover, who started Veganuary, $1 Million Vegan, and more recently Veg Capital. And we spoke about, how we can be activists by voting with our wallet as well. If you put your dollars in the right place, hopefully we can support the movement. Because he gave the example of, trying to remember the name of the company, but it was basically a dairy company who then started producing vegan milks and stuff like that. And he's saying, like in the boardroom there, if they can see that all their vegan products are making them more money, why are they going to keep investing in the old stuff? They're going to start transferring. So for us, like being out here in New Zealand, there's a lot of vegan products which are still very expensive because they don't have the subsidies. But sometimes it's a case of, well, I will have less of something this week so that then I can back this vegan product and, show that I'm willing to put the money into it, and that's, it's a very small form of activism, but it means that you're helping to guide capitalism in the right sort of direction. And I know a lot of vegans, myself included, not a fan of capitalism, but it's a system that we're entrenched in. So if we can put our money towards the right things, and hopefully we can create change, but also keep pushing the information and pushing these politicians to start making the policies around an actual world that they can politic around it. They're not going to have one at this rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, you mentioned where you get your facts and figures from before, and Jackie, you write a lot of the news stuff for Vegan FTA. Where do you source your news from?
Oh,
it's a bit here, there, everywhere. Like we check out plant-based news and stuff like that. I'm not sure where, because most of the content that goes up on there is between us, and we've got another new volunteer on the page now as well. We tend to sort of go through, pick things ourselves that we think are interesting. But working with people like Dr. Mike Joy, who's a freshwater ecologist, we can see that he's got all the approved and official scientific studies and stuff like that. So
he's got his fingers right on the button. We follow him at Dr. Mike Joy, or he also has an organization, the Better Futures Forum, which has a lot of information that's working towards the future. I follow organizations such as Farm Forward are doing great things. There's new organizations, new companies all the time, and I just see them sign up and get their newsletters. I love what Surge is doing at the moment as well.
Yeah, that's Earthling Ed's thing?
Yes. Yeah. There's Surge, there's Refarmed. There's heaps of good stuff going on.
Are you ever scared of spreading misinformation, or are you guys pretty you dive into it?
We're usually pretty if we think something's dodgy, we won't share it. As I say, we try to go for people who are, properly confirmed. We know if someone like Plant-Based News has normally done it, we know they've done their checks. But, if we're going health things, then we'll look at nutritionfacts.org, with Dr. Greg or Dr. Clapper. We always try to. The thing is, so in this day and age, you could never be 100% sure. You can be 99.9. But we always try to make sure whatever we're putting out, is as confirmed as possible. It's
we don't really do opinions, do we, on Vegan FTA? I think probably this interview has probably been the most of my own opinions that I've shared anyway, which just kind of happened. But on FTA, we're all about, like Gareth said, positivity and inspiring our viewers, but promoting other vegans.
And our real thing, we're not really a news site as such. We're more of an activism hub, and it's more about getting that activism out there, and through our activist series, learning from the activists themselves who are doing it, and and having that share of warm and fuzzies as well. I mean, we follow a lot of animal sanctuaries. We've got some great ones because you do get bombarded with a lot of I shouldn't say negativity, but there's a lot of horrible stuff that we vegans have to see and know that non-vegans just
don't know or don't want to know, and that can be a hard thing to bear. So, you know, we have our fair share of warm fuzzies as well. We try and keep that balance of sort of knowledge and information, but, you know, lightheartedness as well. I think that's important.
Also, a lot of our content is video content, and when you've got video of something, it's quite hard to stage a lot of these things, and the CGI isn't up there on a lot of people's usual stuff to make this sort of stuff. So when you've got the photos and the evidence there, it's normally quite hard to get that too wrong. But, you know, we have had in the past, we did a video for the Sanctuary series about Toffee, the goat from Black Sheep Animal Sanctuary as well. And we had the person who found them, they got in contact with us, you know, to say, you got your story all wrong and stuff like that. No, we weren't hunters. No, we weren't chasing the goat. But then I think it's basically that they're trying to sort of make themselves out to be not so bad. And then we talked with the Sanctuary, and they sort of gave their side of the story, and we had to find a bit of a middle ground to keep both parties happy, because we didn't want people getting angry at the Sanctuary for having the wrong story. But you know,
I mean, the truth is, we went to that Sanctuary, and whatever the truth was with Toffee, we met a lot of animals that day which were hunting orphans. So whether they were pigs, goats, or whatever. So, you know,
we try to keep the opinion out of it as much as possible until we come here.
Yeah.
No, I think, you know, it's a nice balance. We're still talking facts. You mentioned 12 billion. I learned that thing about New Zealand subsidies. No, that's so funny how you mentioned you've got this positive, I guess, outlook or persona, but you're also a little bit riddled with all the negative news stories. Do you have certain things that you try to do, potentially in your daily routine, or the way that you look at things in terms of your perspective, to help you maintain like a positive relationship with, I guess, the planet or news platforms or things like that?
Well, like Jackie just sort of come off Facebook now because there's so much negative sort of stuff on there. But for us, we try and meditate every day. When you talk to a lot of the biggest sort of activists, the ones who are going out there and doing this stuff over and over, meditation, you don't have to be religious at all. You know, there's heaps of stuff on Spotify or other apps just to learn to do that, and just basically being mindful, being present, and not trying to get. Because once it gets on top of you, you know, it can just seep in and get stuck in your head. But you've got to be able to let that go, and it is a hard one trying to stay positive with all this stuff. But for me, I used to hunt and stuff like that before I became vegan and stuff like that. And so for me, sometimes seeing the more graphic stuff, I'm able to now use that sort of disconnection that I used to have, but in a positive way, that I understand what's going on there. So I'm able to look at it from a distance view and then share it and get that information out there. It's a funny thing to use those tools, those mental habits and abilities now for good things, for vegan stuff. But sometimes you do have to slightly distance yourself from to, you know, get it out there. But
I know I'm a definite hibernator, I suppose. I do take breaks. I know a lot of activists do that as well. And as Gareth said, I've come off my personal Facebook. If you've got, you know, 5,000 Facebook friends, and, you know, 4,500 of those are vegan, and they're all pushing the vegan message, and look at what's happened today, look what's going on, oh, it's terrible, you know, there's only so much of that you can take on board. And you know, it affects your sleep and all kinds of things. So for me to come off Facebook, it doesn't make that stuff go away. I know it's still going on, but it makes me a better activist. If, you know, it means I can focus on doing my best for the animals by just doing what I'm doing. I've got my goals. I know what I want to do. I know what I want to say. I hang out on more places like Instagram. I find Instagram more positive.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. There's a lot of great people on LinkedIn, and I think, you know, yes, there is some bloody awful, horrendous stuff going on in the world, and I, you know, like everybody else, I want it to stop now. But I just, in that kind of situation, I think about all the great people that are doing amazing things as well. You know, I check out people like Philip Wallen, great Australian guy, you know, with everything that he's done. I love Captain Paul Watson. You know, there are always not just great, you know, not just big, high-profile activists as well. I think of the people that I know in my own circle that are doing great things. And like in the Activist series, you know, it's fantastic to know there are so many great people out there that, yes, there are awful things, and so much of the time it's the awful things that get the coverage, but there are some amazing things going on and so many amazing people doing them as well. And I think one of the things that we learned when we were filming the Activist series, we interviewed Bob Isaacson, and he's from Dharma Voices for Animals. Had never heard of them before. I'd never heard of Bob, bless his heart, although he's had an amazing career and amazing life over in the US. And he has, and his organization, Dharma Voices for Animals, has devoted themselves to, I shouldn't say converting the Buddhist population, but it's, educating.
Yeah, they go to the monasteries in countries like Thailand and Cambodia and stuff like that, and going to the monasteries of the Buddhists and basically getting the leaders, the heads, the elders and stuff like that to look at what they're doing and
look at the teachers of the Buddha, really, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, because it's with Buddhism, there's a lot of people who know about Buddhists who eat meat and stuff like that. According to when we're speaking with Bob in this talk, you know, there's something in the scripture that was basically, some believe it to be misinterpreted, that they can, but the way Bob was explaining it is that if a monk thinks that an animal has been slaughtered for them, they're not allowed to eat it at all. If there's any slight chance that an animal has been killed for them, they can't, they're not meant to touch it, you know, they're not meant to be eating that sort of stuff. And so they're trying to go back through all these countries who are now Buddhists eating meat, and trying to sort of be like, well, look at this bit of scripture here, what do you think about it now? And if they are successful in their mission, I can't remember what the percentage is. It's something like
500 million Buddhists in the world or something like that. It's a lot.
If they can crack that and get them all back onto, you know, not eating meat and stuff like that, that is going to have a huge impact, because there's a thing called the tipping point. I think it's when something like 10 or 15% of the population goes a certain way, you know, it just creates a chain reaction, and then you have your tipping point, you know. And so the Buddhist community makes up a huge percentage in that, you know. So if we can, it's another amazing work that somebody out there is doing that we had no idea about. But if it goes ahead and if it really it gets what it needs, you know, then it's going to be huge for the movement. But of course, we hadn't heard anything about it until we started doing the series.
We had no idea. So things like that are so uplifting. So it's like, yeah, there's some awful things going on, but, you know, look at this guy. And I think for anybody, you know, we see things all the time. You know, what about Dalai Lama? Why isn't he vegan? There's a YouTube short documentary that Bob told us about, and it's called Animals and the Buddha. And if you look at that, you know, it explains that he's completely, it just explains it in detail, it analyzes it all, takes it all apart, and, you know, he's absolutely on the right track, which is, you know, that could be really exciting. And I think, you know, like I said before, with the dairy industry and all that, it's not sustainable. The time will come where, farming is just not going to be this way anymore.
No, that's so awesome, that Buddhist thing. I'd never heard of it, because there's so many different branches of Buddhism as well, like Zen, Tibetan, freaking all these different levels of it. And I didn't actually know they ate. I thought they just had dairy, I think, or it was the opposite. Maybe they didn't have dairy, but they ate meat. But what an awesome mission. I actually didn't know Gareth used to be a hunter. What happened there? Like, how did you, what?
Yeah, well, it was when I was like living, because I grew up in Wales, and, you know, I used to go bunny bashing on the weekend. You know, I go up the hills and catch rabbits and make burgers out of them and all sorts of nastiness, you know. And I was looking at being a butcher for quite a while when I first came out to New Zealand. And it was just, you know, my mum raised me and my brother to be, you know, we knew where our meat came from, you know, that wholesome thing, like Hugh Fernley Whittenstall was one of my sort of idols as a kid, you know, with his river cottage, you know, rearing your animals on there, and then you slaughter them and you cook a wonderful meal with them. And now when I look back, I'm like, that's warped. But yeah, I was, I was quite happy with all that stuff. And out here in New Zealand, there's quite a big hunting culture and stuff like that. But for me, as Jackie mentioned briefly earlier, I wasn't even watching the documentary. We were in the van, and I was playing a video game on my laptop. I was busy killing things, and she was watching What the Health. And then I had one ear out, as I normally do, so I can hear what she's if she yells at me or anything.
Right.
And yeah, just the fact came up about dementia, and my granddad had just been diagnosed, and knowing how much meat, cheese, and fish, and all the good stuff, we were brought up on, it got the gears turning for me. And when I used to hunt, there was a few times when there was just like this little thing at the back of my head that said that it wasn't quite right. And it was especially when the rabbits got myxomatosis in our local area, and that causes them to go blind, deaf, and they swell up, and basically they suffocate to death, and it's horrible. And we used to go up there, and you go put them out of the misery, you just go and finish off all these rabbits. And I just remember, just having that sad sensation. I was just like, there's something really messed up with this, But of course, I was ingrained, and I was brought up, to know that this is the wholesome thing to do. But yeah, it's just having that right fact put in front of you at the right time, that all of a sudden, someone who could be a bit brutal like I used to be, you can change. It can all change. It's never too late. It just needs the right messenger.
Have you chatted to like other people who hunt since becoming vegan?
Not too many. Like as I say, down in Southland, we talked to some farmers and stuff like that. But we haven't had much to do with much of the hunting community anymore.
Right.
Maybe was Justin Reinick a hunter? He may have been.
He used to do a bit of hunting. Yeah, he grew up. I'm currently at the time of recording this, editing in the next episode of Activism, and that's where Justin Reinick. He's in Steinbeck, Manitoba, out in Canada, and really great talking to him because he was a former slaughterhouse worker and a hog farmer out in Canada, and of course he's now speaking out about the industry and doing some wonderful activism there. And yeah, it was interesting talking to him about that whole hunting thing. And so many of us, like we go out there and you see the animal, and that's the most wonderful part, is when you've stalked up upon them, and you're there so close, and you're like, yeah, this is so wonderful. And then we do the silly thing as shoot them, or snare them, as I used to do and stuff. And it's just, I was talking about it just the other day on our walk. We need to make it so, you have a rifle that is, it's basically a camera. So you can go, you get there, you can take the perfect shot, and it just, takes the photo instead of beauty, so it can carry on running, and not waste a life.
Well, I mean, I wonder if your experience will help kind of guide the conversation in the right direction. I remember I accidentally, I'm a videographer, and a lot of the time people see me, they walk up to me, and a lot of the time drones come up in conversation because it fascinates people. It's this new magical thing. And we're just talking, and this has happened to me like maybe 4 or 5 times, and it's a little bit frustrating in hindsight, but then I'm like, frick, what can you do? And you just start talking, you're like, oh, what about this model? What about that model? And I kind of give him my insight, and then like, oh yeah, that sounds great for hunting. And I'm like, oh, come on. No, it's this other one. It's like super loud. It's really great. It can go a long distance. And it's funny how it works in hindsight, but I think hunters are a different category, and the mindset, I think, is very fascinating. So, I mean, in the next few months, if you ever have that chat to a hunter, I wonder how that conversation's going to go, Gareth. I reckon you're the man to go to.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like what we were saying with the farmers before, if you can create that middle ground, like when I have talked about hunting with people, usually, I say, how I used to do it, and I remember doing this, and, if you can go into detail of the practices you used to do, it puts them at that ease, and then I can sort of say, well, now these days, I think differently. I had just last night I was talking to a mate from Canada, and he said, what's your thoughts on fishing, and I never try and preach too much. I try and just, make a level playing field, and then from there, well, my opinion, just for me anyway, I feel this way about it. And I look forward to having these conversations with people, because yeah, if it's a seed planted, there's something exciting growing. So.
Well, I mean, living in a camper, I guess most times when you're not house sitting, do you feel like you're quite connected with nature?
Yeah, we love going for hikes and stuff like that. And if tourism ever opens up again, I would highly recommend, people go out and, one was, it's a bit of a controversial one in my head. There's what is it called? Waikanaia? On the Kapiti Coast, the island with the birds.
Kapiti Island.
Kapiti Island. I knew the area, but not the name. But Kapiti Island, and that's it's like an eco sanctuary thing, and they've basically restored it to how New Zealand used to be. And so there's just hundreds of native birds there, and there's another time where sort of like the old habits came in, with the whole stalking thing and silently creeping through the woods there, because there's all these native birds around. It's just so beautiful. And it's a controversial one because they trap and everything on the island in order to get it back to that natural state. So it's wonderful to go see the animals, but then it's not like going to a zoo, but then
no,
it's a tricky one. New Zealand's a tricky one. I suppose Australia the same, with, the possum stuff.
The whole possum thing, yeah. It was really interesting when we went there and we learnt that, hundreds of years ago, New Zealand had no land mammals, or no
the only animals here were bats. So basically everything else has been introduced. Everything else has been a human problem that we've created.
Yeah. Rats were introduced, and then they became a problem because they were killing the wildlife. So then they brought in stoats to eat the rats, but the stoats found other wildlife a lot more easy to
and then
kill.
The woman swallowed the fly and then she ate the spider.
It was really like that,
right.
And the whole thing with possums, being okay in Australia and not okay over here because they just, destroy so many things. And because, it's just New Zealand wasn't set up to have these animals. So, it's really...
Yeah. But living in the van, it definitely, because we're sort of, the van's so small, in the summer you're living outdoors most of the time, so you do tend to get a bit more sort of in tune with what's going on. And you became a weather nerd.
I'm a weather nerd, yeah. I
still am. But yeah, it's good. Right.
Yeah. We got to know for travel and safety and all of that kind of stuff, and just to plan anything, so.
Weather's like where it's at. It's almost like a hobby for me, checking the weather. Even Alexa in the morning, she always says the weather in her thing. Do you guys go like birding or something? Have you heard of that?
Birding?
Is that like bird watching?
I hope it's not like dogging.
Oh.
I don't know what dogging is, but
I was going to say everybody knows what.
Birding, bang on, Jackie. It's basically bird watching. They call themselves birders. I got super passionate about this when I heard of the term and bought myself a pair of binoculars. It's actually a really nice way to hunt, to like look instead of like murder. It's like, I reckon you guys would really love it if you do like to stalk little animals and things like that. But it's awesome hobby to get, like, because you go for this walk, and what I found, like this trek, maybe 3Ks or whatever, could usually take you half an hour. You go birding and that trek now takes you 2.5 hours. And I think it's such a nice way to kind of calm. And if you haven't heard of that term before, I think it's well worth looking into, because it's like this beautiful, not meditation, but Zen with nature.
That sounds wonderful.
That does sound good, yeah.
Well, ever since we went to the Kapiti Island there, every time we go out walking, we're so much more aware of the birds around us. And out here we have some wonderful birds like the tui. And if people look up the noise of a tui, it makes a bizarre sound. But like
the noise of a tui, how do you spell tui?
Tui.
Okay, what I'm going to do for everyone, just as an act of service to society, is I'm going to link it in the bio, so you can just click on a little YouTube video, whatever it's going to be, and just nose of a tui.
I can't listen to it and not be happy. It just makes you smile, and they're just wonderful birds. And we saw one this morning when we were walking the dog, and just singing his head off, and just really putting his heart and soul into it. And and we've noticed that, when we do go on walks or hikes and that kind of thing, that we see a lot more than other people, because I guess we're just aware of it, and we know they're there, and we know just to stop and take the time. People that go marching don't see anything,
Yeah, we have the habit of stopping and picking up all the bees and stuff as well, and worms, and moving them off the path as well. we've ascended to that level of veganism now where we're removing the insects.
Gareth even puts cockroaches outside. Not that we have them in the van, but when we've been house sitting and we've seen cockroaches. This is a guy that used to hate cockroaches with a passion and still doesn't embrace them, but he won't kill them anymore. He's like...
Well, even whitetails. Like, we only have one poisonous spider out here, and it's called a whitetail, and they are angry little buggers. But even though I put them outside now and try and make sure they're as far away from the house as possible.
Hundreds of meters down the road.
Yeah. I can't bring myself to kill them now.
No, yeah. I've gotten to that level of veganism where I don't really kill flies or spiders or anything. I'll pick up like cockroaches or little bugs in the house just with my hand and get them out. With spiders, sometimes on my hand, like I'm not too scared, even though it's Australia. I've kind of learned to deal with it. Like, if it's going to kill me, it's going to kill me, whatever. But I wouldn't pick up, I don't know, like bees or like slugs, like you mentioned slugs off paths. Like
yes, yep.
No, absolutely. My limit. You are slimy. You are leaving things on me. No, take your souvenirs with you.
You need to learn you get the leaf or something like that, and you sort of you get them on the leaf, and scoop them and then pop them over there. And like with bees and stuff like that, you get them on. If you've got, I don't know, a credit card in your pocket, or even like your keys, a bit of a keychain thing. Just get them just to grab hold of something, and you can move them easy enough without having to get hands on. But
I picked up a slug, and I picked up a big fat worm the other day, didn't I? So, which is unheard of for me. I would have never ever done that before if I wasn't vegan. But it's having that respect for just everything, and not wanting someone to stand on it.
Yeah, snails are the worst because when you see them on the path, kind of, or like dragged along the path, it's weirdly heartbreaking. You're like, oh no, this person, and I don't think anyone steps on a snail because nobody wants that on their shoe. You know what I mean? And God forbid it's barefoot. But like, you're also like, oh, so sad. And so thank you for putting them off the path.
Yeah, got to be done. Got
to make up for all the other stuff. So
yeah, for sure. And on the tail end of the episode, there's so much we touched on today. Is there any bit of like wisdom or passion or anything that we maybe didn't get to talk about that you would like to bestow upon us?
I think there was something that I was talking about this morning with F.T.A. and like we say, with our founder, Sarah, being quite shy. She has achieved so much. We've got hundreds of thousands of followers now on Facebook alone, and we've got Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube channel, and all this has come from one person who wanted to do something. And I was really scared to put myself out there. Everyone is scared. Joey Carbstrong, Earthling Ed, everybody at some stage would have been scared to put themselves out there. And if you want to do something to make more of a difference, but you don't want to put yourself out there, you can still create your own presence, like Vegan FTA. It's not called Sarah, it's called Vegan FTA. If she wanted it to be about her, she would have done it about her. And so, anybody can really do that. And
anyone can really make a difference. And to expand on that as well, if you do want to make a difference in that, something we talked about with Sarah was, you do have to back it as well. And you can naturally grow things to a point, but you do also have to, like in Sarah's case, she gave up having the soy lattes, so then she had a few dollars each week, to then advertise and back it and get it out there to more people. And even from behind the scenes, you can make something big happen. And I'm so grateful that she created Vegan FTA, that it's given us the opportunity to give our activism a place and get others out there. And if people don't know what it stands for, it's vegan for the animals. And you can make a difference for the animals in so many different ways. And if people go and check out the Activist series, you'll learn from a whole heap of different people, different ways to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll definitely leave up a few things linked. Definitely the Veg Fest interview that Jackie did as well. I need to grab that from you if I can't find it. And next to the Tui noise. Is there any place where we can go to connect with you that is the best place? So we've got the Facebook, with the Instagram, and of course I'll leave this linked up. But what are the best places to connect with you guys?
Well, as you say, the Facebook, Insta, all those things for Vegan FTA, and also our YouTube channel at Vegan FTA. like and subscribe. But yeah, like get over there. But also, if you want to see more stuff from us, me and Jackie, we have our cooking page, which is Camper Van Kitchen on Facebook. And yeah, apart from that,
because we're recipe book authors, we didn't even talk about that. We've got a cookbook we brought out earlier in the year, but we give away a whole lot of free recipes as well.
Yeah, and they're all vegan. The latest ones are more whole food, plant-based ones. So yeah, a bit more nutritionally balanced and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm celiac, so they're gluten-free as well. And so there's something for everyone on there. And we update it as much as we can.
But at the moment, we're working too much on F.T.A. stuff. But yeah, Vegan FTA, you can find all the great content on there. And yeah, all the video series on YouTube as well as Facebook. But yeah.
That's about it. Perfect. Well, look, I was just going to say on behalf of both myself and the Plant Paradigm community, and I guess for the animals, thank you so much for the work you guys do. It doesn't go unnoticed by any way, shape or form. You know, browsing through it, it's definitely some amazing work and messages that you guys send across, and the amount of seeds that are planted is just, you know, I couldn't even begin to comprehend. So from one, I guess, not activist, but human to another, thank you so much for the work you do for our planet, for the animals, and, you know, for the health of many, many beings. And look, thank you once again for jumping on the show and having a chat. It was an absolute ball.
Well, thank you so much. We're so glad to be doing what we're doing, and thank you for having us.
Perfect. Have a good one, guys. Hi, welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening and or watching all the way through. I really appreciate your time. Thank you to Jackie and Gareth once again for having this conversation and for doing all that they do for the animals. I truly think that their impact is long-standing, and the amount of animals' lives they've saved, I couldn't even give you a guesstimate. So super grateful for Jackie and Gareth and the work they do, and also activists and people in the online social media space that are making a difference, having these powerful, impactful conversations. It truly does matter, even the 1%ers. If you enjoyed this conversation, the best way to connect to Jackie and Gareth will be in the show notes below. If you want to support the podcast and help us reach as many people as possible, the best two ways. The first is sharing on social media accounts. Of course, it is cliche, Instagram stories, Facebook shares, YouTube comments, all of that stuff is amazing. And the second is, of course, leaving an amazing review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. It really does help us on the charts so much. But other than that, thank you so much for lending us your ears and helping your brain grow and develop and educating yourself. Stay happy, eat plants. Peace.